Oh, before anybody else call, let's get into our segment, our long running segment, Cop Watch. Oh, where is it? Where is it? Where?
Bad cops, bad cops. Bad cops, bad cops.
Oh no.
Bad cops, bad cops.
No, no.
Bad cops, bad
Oh
cops. Yes,
no.
Springfield cops are on the case. But
yes.
what do you
This,
expect for the money?
in bad cop news this week, we have a little bit of progress in the Elijah McClain case.
Yes.
Yes, for everybody who doesn't remember, he was the young man who I think he was probably gay. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I think he was pretty gay. Okay, from everything, from his mannerisms, and from the way he was very soft spoken, very effeminate in his. But anyway, so and that's one of the reasons why the story was so outrageous to people about 2 years ago because this kid was so obviously non-threatening to the police, and it was just one of them. So this young man, Elijah McClain, three Aurora police officers, and two paramedics are
Right.
facing criminal indictments in the death of this young man, Elijah McClain, after a state grand jury reached a different conclusion than earlier investigations. Answering cries for justice from thousands who demanded arrest during city protests, city council meetings, and community forums. The grand jury indicted Aurora police officers Nathan Woodyard, Randy Rodema, former officer Jason Rosenblatt, and paramedics Jeremy Cooper and Lieutenant Peter Sishwek on 32 combined counts last week. The indictment comes just 2 years after he died while being violently detained by the officers and was injected with the sedative ketamine by
Oh.
paramedics, which, I mean, Special K is known for putting people down. Like I said, this kid was very much effeminate, very soft, very soft spoken and mild mannered. Even in the video that went very viral, again, you could tell this kid wasn't really a threat to anybody. And, that's one of the reasons why it was so outrageous. The arrest warrants were issued on Wednesday. All five men turned themselves in. The four officers and paramedics who still work for the city of Aurora were suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the criminal charges. Their Aurora city manager Jim Toombley said in a statement, all five face charges of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. Now, two of the officers, Redema and Rosenblatt, also face a count of second-degree assault with intent to cause bodily injury, and to cause bodily injury, and a count of crime of violence related to the second-degree assault charge. The paramedics also face a charge of second-degree assault with intent to cause bodily injury, a count of second-degree assault for recklessly causing bodily injury by means of a deadly weapon. Ketamine. Again, people overdose on that regularly.
Wait a minute, I'm still trying. You listed a series of charges.
Right.
The kid died.
Yeah, he is dead, unfortunately.
None of the charges that you gave said anything like manslaughter.
Yeah, manslaughter. All five face charges of manslaughter.
Oh, we do get manslaughter.
And
Okay.
criminally negligent homicide.
Oh, okay.
Now, these are the additional charges. The additional charges
okay.
are second-degree assault with intent to cause bodily injury and a count of crime of violence related to the second-degree assault charges. Yeah, and the paramedics also face a charge of second-degree assault on top of the manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. Now, this young boy was walking to a convenience store to purchase tea, just like Trayvon Martin, on the night of August 24th, 2019, when someone called 911, just like with Trayvon Martin, to report a suspicious person. The three police officers contacted McClain as he returned home. He was walking and apparently got scared that these police were whooping at him And so they tackled him, handcuffed him, and used a carotid chokehold to block the flow of blood to his
Oh,
brain.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so we've got choking.
Yeah,
We've got drugs.
yeah. The paramedics injected him with 500 milligrams of ketamine before taking him to the hospital. Unfortunately, this young man suffered cardiac arrest on the way to the hospital, where he was later declared brain dead. He died on August 13th, 2019, after being removed from life support. And Rev, like I said, this was such a horrific, tragic story, because this young man was such a mild mannered, such a sweet boy, such a mild, a really nice kid. Really didn't seem to have a brutal bone in his body, and even in the video, he seemed to be more begging and crying more so than trying to fight with people.
So he was the quintessent illustration of comply and you won't die.
Right.
Except the second part of that sentence somehow fell through the crack.
Yeah, apparently.
There you couldn't be more compliant than Elijah was.
He was very much.
He complied so much that he complied to death.
Right.
And he gave them everything they wanted.
Right.
Up to his soul.
That's the unfortunate part. That's the unfortunate part. I didn't know that they could inject you with drugs. I didn't know the police could, the paramedics could inject people with drugs to help the police subdue people. I wasn't aware of that.
I wasn't either.
Like,
wow, this is a new one for me. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, me neither. And we have a second, before we have to go to a commercial break. We have a second case where we might finally be getting some justice as well. Former Minnesota police officer is facing charges. This just came down, I think, earlier today. Is facing a new charge in the killing of Daunte Wright. Now, Daunte Wright was the kid on earlier this year in Minnesota, who was killed right down the street from where George Floyd was killed. Okay, so this kid was the one who was driving, and he was on the phone with his mother. And he was scared, so he called his mama while they were chasing him. And and so this kid, the woman, the former police officer who is accused of fatally shooting Daunte Wright during a traffic stop, is now facing an even more serious charge in the face of the young black man's death. Kim Potter, who was the white female police officer, if you remember, she has now been charged with first-degree manslaughter in the killing of Daunte Wright on April 11th in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, just northwest of Minneapolis. The new charge is addition to a previously filed second-degree manslaughter charge. Now, this lady, Porter, resigned after the shooting and 26 years on the police force. So she wasn't no rookie. Right. She was on the force for 26 years. She fatally shot the 20-year-old man. This was also another viral video that went around the world right after the George Floyd, in the sort of the haze of the George Floyd controversy. So it's always good to see that some justice being meted out in these types of cases. And let me just say this: I'm not a huge fan of the institution of Black Lives Matter, the organization, or at least the people who running it, and some of their motives and intentions in running Black Lives Matter. But I will say that they did bring a lot of attention to these types of cases, especially in the post George Floyd, the aftermath of the George Floyd of his death. And so, like, I think a lot of them, and a lot of the activists in the movement for Black Lives deserve some credit for bringing this stuff to the forefront. And a lot of this, I don't think a lot of these charges would be happening if they had not said, look, it's enough is enough, and had sort of like not sort of hijacked the country, the consciousness of the country for a summer, for an entire summer.
Well, I suppose, although, some of those protests, a lot of those matter of fact, most of those protests were locally organized.
Yeah, but it was a worldwide thing.
Yeah, but I mean, they were locally organized. In fact, I would say there's a combination of local people being fed up, the pervasiveness of social media, and, well, Black Lives Matter Incorporated really knowing how to use social media very well to push the message.
But that is an internet. That's what the international movement has become. Like the local people, the people have locally become influenced by the national and international reaction. You know what I mean? George Floyd in a vacuum. I mean, we talk about this all the time. George Floyd, if he had died right before coronavirus had started, if he had died just a few months earlier, he would have just been another guy that people would have been marching about or protesting about in his little corner of the world. But really, the entire world forced Minnesota to take it seriously. People from people were marching in France and Australia and England. And you have people from Brazil and everywhere else saying, there's George Floyd murals all over the world now. Yeah. And so that put a lot of pressure on the United States. It's one of the reasons why I've always said that Martin Luther King, I think, is the greatest living American. I mean, not the greatest living American, but the greatest American, period, because he knew how to put pressure on the American government. He knew how to embarrass America in front of the world. And that's what happened last summer with the George Floyd situation. And a lot of the activists started embarrassing the heck out of America around the world. So all right, folks.
But you know what? I'd have to say that I'd have to give credit not just to the leaders of Black Lives Matter, and I'm not saying this just to be petty with them, but the skill sets that they displayed. Your generation just seems to have gotten it, the way to use social media.
Right.
It's not something there's just a few experts that know how to do it, and everybody else is following along. You all have changed the game with what one does with tech.
Right.
I mean, my 5 and 8 year old know more about tech as a social media tool than I do.
Right.
And like I said, they're 5 and 8 years old.
Right. Caller, please hold on. We got to go to a break. We'll be right back here on Issues and Answers on WLTH 1370 AM. Please stay with us.
Bad cops. Bad cops. Bad cops. Bad cops.
You are listening to Scott and the Rev on WLTH 1370 AM. Give us a call, 219-885-1371.